notice here, we'll take a look at the berms. See, this was put in about 6-7 years ago, and this is an additional area of dirt we put in, which helps if we're right at a risky point. These buds are very delicate. If in the next 2 weeks we get a cold snap, we're prone to frost, and these leaves will die. If we get sustained temperatures more than 2 or 3 hours below 29 degrees. But the berms here, if we were to have a real cold snap, help protect the roots and help keep warmth in the soil. I want to talk a little bit about our planting regimen here. Most of our vineyards are 8 by 3 feet, so we have 8 feet row spacing, 3-foot plant spacing, and we do a single cordon system. If you look here at a typical plant, this is the trunk, this is the cordon or the arm. It's a single like this, okay? On one end of each row there's going to be a double cordon, just because you don't want to have a root right at the end of the base pole that holds up the wires here. So single cordon, we try to make sure through various techniques during the growing season to produce optimal fruit. We don't go for quantity, we go for quality. So what we tend to do is we tend to drop a fair bit of fruit during the veraison, which is the ripening of the fruit when it turns color. If it's a red grape, it goes from green to purple. That's the sugar levels coming up. So if you have 3 or 6 clusters on a little vine, some of them will be really purple, some of them will be purple and green, some will be totally green. So during that time is when you go through, and things that are way behind in the ripening curve, you cut them off. So you will drop fruit, you will lower your yields, you will lower the amount of juice that you get, hence the amount of wine that you can make, but you will get the quality of the fruit up, not only because you have more even ripening on each plant, but because you're lessening the load on each plant. So a couple things I'll point out here too. These are our positioning wires for the shoots. We have 2 buds on the spur, but in about 7 weeks they'll be 5 or 6 feet tall with a lot of leaves. These things go really fast, okay? So the idea that we have here, and you'll see this throughout the region, is because it's a cool region, what will happen is if you don't position the shoots, they will flop over as they grow tall, and then the fruit zone is down in here. They will actually shelter the fruit zone and the fruit from the wind and from the sun, which is what you need to get it ripe. So we'll go through by hand, take all the shoots and position them up here so that we get full morning and full afternoon sun directly on the fruit. In June or July, as things are starting to really ripen, we'll go through by hand and pull the leaves. It's called leafing, to allow airflow and sunshine to get in to the fruit to help ripening. In July, we'll go through and cut down the shoots to about 5 or 6 feet. The concept there is that you need the leaves for photosynthesis for the health of the plant, but we're not making wine from leaves. You need the emphasis of the energy of the plant to go into the grapes. If you look over here in the distance, you can see the birdhouse up there on the pole. That is actually an owl barn. You'll see them throughout the vineyards. The concept there is you get a nesting family of barn owls that will reproduce and have little ones, and the nocturnal birds come out and they feed on rodents, gophers, moles, ground squirrels, this sort of thing. So that way we don't have to put poison in the vineyard or deal with the infestation of rodents. In theory, they will take care of it for us. A couple other things you can see here are the streamers that are on top of these poles for birds. Now, during the harvest time, as the fruit's really getting ripe and sugar levels are rising, all animals are attracted to sugar. They are not going to come and eat the fruit. Birds will not come in, but they will prick a berry just to get some of that juice. If they prick that berry and that juice comes out, the cluster is about the size of my fist. They're smaller, but very tight. So the juice will get in there and it'll infiltrate the entire cluster, and then the amount of sugar is so great that the ants will come up, and then you're done. So we have netting here that we will pull up once the sugars start to rise to cover the fruit zone. However, when you have bird pressure on a vineyard, typically it's in the perimeter. These trees along the driveway could host a lot of little birds, but this area has got a tremendous amount of birds of prey. Red-shouldered hawks, red-tailed hawks, screech owls, barn owls, all sorts of birds that are birds of prey that will attack other birds. So if you're a little guy living in these trees and you want to come out here to get some food somehow, you don't want to go in the middle of the vineyard, because if there's a hawk up there, you're toast. 70 to 80% of what happens here is nature. We can't stop the wind, we can't make it rain, we can't change the temperature. We can react to it, we can try to be proactive. If we see a rainstorm coming in during harvest, we'll try to get as much fruit as we can before the rain hits it, but we can't control any of that. and that's the risk of farming. Right now they're doing a little drip here. We have two 800-foot deep wells. We have automatic sensors in the ground, and because the vines are starting to wake up, we haven't had rain in about 2 weeks. The soil sensor gives us an indication it's time to provide a little moisture to the plants so they start the growth cycle in a good way. All these plants provide different things. Some of them provide magnesium, iron, selenium, and of course nitrogen. And it's very interesting because when it's growing, you can actually see the deficiencies of the soil based on how they're growing in the winter. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. The vineyard is amazing. So before we leave the vineyard, I want to just pull some soil here and just give you a little sense of what we're talking about here. It's a fantastic soil. And another thing I want you to remember is the soil is the basis for all wine. Whether it's rocky, wherever it is in the world, the soil is the basis of the wine. Now smell that. That is not dirt, that is soil. And we want our wines to represent our place. So that said, I want you to remember this. We don't consider ourselves winemakers, we consider ourselves wine growers.